Well, we are accommodating 117,000 people overall who are in our asylum process. We're due to spend £3.5 billion in the 22-23 financial year on accommodation and supporting that population of people. That includes £2.7 billion on accommodating asylum seekers. That's £2.3 billion on hotels, and £400 million elsewhere is on other types of accommodation, like dispersed accommodation. So there is a huge amount of money that is going into accommodating a very large number of asylum seekers. 100,000 people that we need to house. If you can point me to a charity that can provide 100,000 beds, I'd be very interested. There just isn't one. So the reality of the situation is that we are working very closely with local authorities through dispersed accommodation. And we have over 50,000 asylum seekers in the private rental sector. And local authorities receive funding for this accommodation of asylum seekers. That's not been sufficient. Thereafter, because we have duties to accommodate asylum seekers, and I'm not willing to let people be destitute and roaming, we have therefore had to use hotels, and we've had to manage that massive operation. For over 40,000 people are in hotel accommodation because we haven't got any extra places to put them. Therefore, there is a private sector element there. The state does not own an infinite number of bed space that can be deployed for this usage, unfortunately. The NGOs and the civil society and charities do not own or are able to provide us with that capacity. So we've got to produce it somewhere. If I can just finish, because it's a very important point to make, and there are lots of misassumptions that are commonly made about this. And therefore, we are using private contractors to enable the bringing on, the identification, the procuring of bed space, whether that's in hotels or via local authorities, and that is coming at a considerable cost. Yes, I don't deny that, but the alternative is to leave these people destitute. Yes. Our primary preference is to accommodate asylum seekers via local authorities, and that's why we want to significantly boost the use of that form of accommodation. It's currently 57,000 people who are housed via local authority dispersal accommodation. We have an ambition of 100,000. That is challenging. That is incredibly difficult. We need local authority support for that. We need to actually find the properties, and that for many, many reasons, not just migration related, there are huge pressures on housing supply. So that is why we've had to go to the next option, which is hotels. We want to end the use of hotels as quickly as possible because it's an unacceptable cost to the taxpayer. It's over £5 million a day on hotel use alone. And as you heard from the PM, we will bring forward a range of alternative sites, and they will include disused holiday parks, former student halls are sites. Well, I should say we are looking at those sites. I wouldn't say anything's confirmed yet, but we need to bring forward thousands of places. And when you talk about vessels, I would just say, and all I can say, because we are in discussions with a wide variety of providers, that everything is still on the table and nothing is excluded. Important to remember the context about the situation we were dealing with in September, in October, and then into November. On some days in September, we received a total number of arrivals of approaching 8,000 small boats arrivals. In October, there were some days in which there were over 1,000 arrivals on a single day. October the 9th, for example, we had over 1,000 people arrive. October the 29th, over 1,000 people arrive. October the 12th, 800 people arrive. So very, very large numbers were arriving. And the challenge was that, and it is an ongoing challenge, is how to accommodate those very high numbers of people arriving at the Western Jetfoil and then being processed at Manston and being moved on to alternative and more sustainable accommodation. That all depends on outflow. And outflow needs to exceed your inflow. And the reality of those several weeks was that outflow was being exceeded by the inflow because it was very difficult to procure sufficient number of beds around the country, whether that's in local authority dispersed accommodation or hotels. The pipeline of hotels was very thin, actually, and so we worked. My instructions were to work intensively to try and procure as quickly as possible hotel space, as urgently. My other actions were to try and increase the capacity at Manston because we were getting very high numbers and we needed to provide suitable accommodation for those people. I then instructed General Stuart Skeets to take over the running and the operations of Manston in or around the end of September, early November, October, and we put up very urgently. I would describe it as an emergency. Extra accommodation so that people would have a roof over their head and a warm bed. That was a very challenging situation. I must put on record that actually the alternative to that would have been to release people to no fixed abode into the local community. I was not willing to do that. When I say the system is being gamed, that's not just my opinion. That's backed up by the first-hand account of people on the front line working for Border Force and who are dealing with this issue directly. Dan Omani, our clandestine Channel Threat Commander, gave evidence to this effect at the Home Affairs Select Committee in October. Tony Smith, a former Director General of Border Force, has been very emphatic on his perception of how modern slavery rules are being used to basically, stay here by people who don't have a right to be here and are using modern slavery laws to stay here longer. And there are now a number of cases where we've had foreign national offenders, serious criminals who have been here for many years, sometimes decades. They have got several convictions. They've served several custodial sentences. We want to remove them, and literally generally, at the 11th hour, they will put in a claim about trafficking or modern slavery. That a common sense view must be that is to thwart their removal when you've got someone who's been here for 15 years and has served. So there is evidence. We also see when it comes to people arriving here illegally on small boats, instances where we ask them on repeated occasions, are you going to claim modern slavery? Are you a victim of trafficking? They will say no, no, no. And then again, when we want to try and remove them, they will make a last-minute claim that they do now remember that they were a modern slavery victim. So I think that the pattern of behaviour does demonstrate that this is being used as a tool to thwart removal.
But could you take the strength away, the strength of feeling about asylum seekers' right to work, to earn enough money to contribute to the country and to be able to afford their own accommodation? It's clear, it seems to be quite a popular thing among the public, quite apart from the strength of feeling among my colleagues here and in the House of Lords. And if nobody...
I'm not aware of any polling which supports that assertion, or any... Well, and in my constituency, speaking anecdotally, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily supported by the people
we have,
that I have a mandate from.
We have different experiences then.
Yes. At the moment, the delivery of Rwanda, i.e. Removing people to Rwanda, is on pause. It's on hold whilst we are going through litigation.